There are so many leaders and followers out there that are as good and in some cases better than Brazilian born, raised and training teachers.
Oh, because we are Brazilian. We know more than you just by the fact that our passport is from Brazil,
It's absolutely the saddest, the worst thing for anybody to say that a teacher is not as good as them just because they're not Brazilian.
A good competitor doesn't mean a good teacher.
I want a community that is safe, comfortable, knowledgeable, growing, inclusive, and embraces everybody. What makes a dance teacher truly authentic? Does it matter where they're born? And does that impact how much they get paid? Well, let's find out. Hello everyone, and welcome back to ZoukNerds. In this episode, we are tackling a topic often whispered about, but rarely discussed publicly. What makes a dance teacher truly authentic? Does a teacher's nationality dictate their status or skill? Is a Brazilian Zouk teacher inherently more authentic just for being Brazilian? Let's discuss these perceptions whilst we share insights from our journey and talk about what truly contributes to a teacher's impact, in our opinion. So, let's go! Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode. My name is Alisson and Sandi, and let's welcome back our beautiful co-host, Gui Prada. Hello, Gui.
Hello, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back, Alisson.
We are here today to talk about something a little bit controversial, polemic, and that we believe a lot of people talk about this, but maybe not publicly. So we're here to do that. We have received these requests multiple times, especially recently, and I also have heard about this over the years, which is, what makes a teacher authentic? Does it matter if somebody is from a country where the dance is from? So let's say, does an Argentinian person automatically gets more status, credibility, and payment in Argentine tango? Does a Brazilian dancer gets more status, payment, contracts, fame in Brazilian Zouk or samba de gafeira and all of the other dance styles just for being Brazilian? And you can go on and on and on for all the other dance styles. Is it true? Is it real? Does it really happen in the community? Well, I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about this. And I think Guy and I are in a very special position because both of us have not actually had Brazilian dance partners, which is quite rare for a lot of the teachers that travel around and do this for as long as we have done. We haven't had Brazilian dance partners for whatever reason. For me, it was because my entire career has been outside of Brazil. So, I had local people, local partners that I worked with. For Guy, I believe the same situation, being in the US from the beginning of a teaching career. But I want to start just by saying that I don't believe in that because there are so many leaders and followers out there that are as good and in some cases better than Brazilian born, raised and training teachers. But I can see how that can be an issue and how that issue actually exists in terms of payment, credibility, authenticity, and all of those things. What do you think about that, Guy?
Man, it's such a good topic. It's such a tricky one too. Although I didn't have Brazilian partners, I did have Brazilian partners for collaborations. I collaborated with Paloma for some time. We'll do it again with Brenda as well. So I did have those collaborations. I never had a full-on partner, let alone a Brazilian one. So yeah, it is an interesting position. It is an interesting topic. I always like to make food analogies about everything that is related to dance. And also language analogies as well. For example, learning Chinese. I looked someone from Taiwan to learn Chinese, to learn Mandarin Chinese. I looked from someone from Taiwan that I could learn from, that would explain to me from a Taiwanese perspective and the expressions from there and everything else. However, I was watching these videos about language learning, and the recommendation sometimes is that you learn from somebody that speaks your language and learn the other one. Because then they will be able to explain to you the language that you wanted to learn from the perspective of your own. And then might resonate better. And doing my classes with my tutor from Taiwan, I realized there was sometimes several limitations because he had a hard time translating what he wanted to say in English. And then when I had them speak with for example, with my friends from Singapore that speak English really well, and then they would like very quickly tell me the equivalence, So I was like, I was going for the authentic stuff. And the authentic stuff was really good because I was learning all the expressions, all the things from Taiwan. But in terms of the structure of the language in a more basic form, it was actually harder. And then someone who speaks English as well could explain to me these basic structures better because we are speaking a common language to translate the new language, So in terms of learning how to dance, that's super interesting because in tango, for example, I only had Brazilian teachers for a long time. And I remember when I went to Argentina to learn tango there, I was like, okay, this is cool. But I ran back to my Brazilian teachers because they could translate tango in a way that I could understand and made sense and making the connection with samba de gafieira, with bolero, with forró, with zouk. So there was this common language because the way that the Argentinians would teach was so different. And they had a feeling of the dance. They were already so embodied in the archetype, in the spirit of the dance, that it just exudes from their bodies. And they would say, then you do this. And you're like, do what? So until I could feel the movement, feel that energy, feel that, that ethereal aspect of the dance, I needed someone to translate it to me. And my Brazilian teachers did it really well, But for sure, whenever we would bring an Argentinian teacher in, authenticity, authority, all these things are implied, We wouldn't research who this person is. Just by the fact that he's from Argentina, authority is implied. Just by the fact they are Argentinian people, Argentinian dancers that teach tango, double authority, So yes, it was more expensive. And yes, we by default would think that they knew more. But then in the class, sometimes we would learn cool things. But in my head, it was like, oh, I like my local teachers more, So it was more like being exposed to something new, to something truly authentic. They were speaking in Spanish. They were speaking Portuguese sometimes with a heavy Spanish accents. They moved in a particular way. They had all the little tricks and things that the tangueros have. And that was nice to see. But that didn't mean better learning experience necessarily. But in many cases, it meant being exposed to how the thing can be when it's in its like traditional form, in its maximal form. So it was two experiences. It was like the learning one and the, let's say, getting inspired one or getting different input one, I might say. So I will start there with my experience, like learning tango, for example.
And that's exactly how I see it, because I think there's different stages of your dance that one may be better than the other. For example, when people ask me, oh, I want to really get good at Zouk and I want to go to Brazil and spend 3 months there. And then they ask me if I think it's a good idea. And that really depends, because it depends on the level that you are at the moment. For example, I wouldn't really recommend you to fully go to Japan or Taiwan to learn their local language, like Mandarin or Japanese, if you didn't quite understand the structure well enough to be able to absorb as much as you can when you're there in person, right? So, for example, to start learning from a teacher from that country may actually not be that beneficial because they cannot relate to you or explain to you in a way that makes sense to you in your local life, in your local habits, or even analogies in your own language or country, culture, and things like that. So I normally say, look, learn as much as you can from the teachers that are local to you, that are available to you for like 1 or 2 years. And then once you really have a good understanding and you can dance really confidently with a lot of people, then you go and you have that experience. Because a lot of the times the teachers in Brazil are not going to be able to give you that relatable reference or that explanation that is going to make sense to you in your own head because of the language barrier and things like that. But they will be able to give you the feeling or maybe that vibe and the atmosphere. So now we're talking about more like the quality of teaching. I don't think one is more quality than the other. So somebody from Argentina or from Brazil or from whatever country, they are not necessarily automatically better. So I don't believe they should automatically get paid more just because of their nationality or because they were trained on that place. But it's more about how well they teach. I've seen so many classes by non-Brazilians who I believed were much better for that group and for that type of student than classes that I've seen masters of Brazilian dancing teaching to those same people. And I'm talking, for example, in Australia, for like 12 years that I was there, I would see a lot of the Australian teachers who trained very hard and studied like crazy to understand the dance. They could make the students progress better and faster and more consistently than a teacher that would come in and stay there for like a month or so, because they kind of didn't really understand how to communicate with the students, how to relate to their students. And another thing that I think is mega important and I am very, very passionate about is about learning other styles for the sake of being able to understand and communicate to people in the language that they are used to. So I always learn as many styles as possible. I learn all of the other dances because I want to help somebody who comes from a different dance style and tell them, see, like when you do this in Kizomba or when you do this in West Coast Swing, you have this feeling, you have this type of connection. So it's quite similar, but the difference is we do this. Instead of like completely erasing and ignoring that previous knowledge that they have and going like, no, this is Brazilian Zouk, forget about your salsa, forget about your West Coast Swing, forget about your whatever. I don't want you to forget. I want to bridge that gap. And I want to make it easier for you to understand it, at least at the very, very beginning, on how to connect the dots so you feel more confident, so you feel that you can dance and learn faster. And eventually, as we progress, we go like, so remember when I told you it was similar? Now we need to work on the feeling. Now we need to work on how the body needs to move differently, how the connection needs to be communicated differently, because there is a wall or a ceiling that you're going to hit if you don't start working on those things. So yes, it's very fast for somebody who dances another style to come and learn Brazilian Zouk and okay, yeah, I'm a Zouk dancer, I'm going to go to Brazil. Not yet, in my opinion, not yet, because your accent may still be too strong or the structure may not be strong enough for you to absorb what the experience that you're going to have in Brazil can provide you. So yeah, it's a danger zone that I that I ask the students to be a little bit careful with.
Interesting. Yeah. There is, I think, a conscious, unconscious bias about someone's skill or mastery of something based on where they are from. Now, if they are from the place where the dance is from, I think by default, you're going to be like, probably knows really well the thing. Probably has been dancing for a long time. I remember when my boss at the law firm that I used to work on, she had this like ongoing, never ending pains on her neck and her arm that she would wake up locked like this, you know. And she was doing acupuncture for, I think, maybe 10 years with this guy, with this Brazilian guy. And then she was like, man, I need something more. And then she heard about there was this Chinese guy living in Botafogo. There was an acupuncturist, but he was way more expensive. Like one session with him was like 3 sessions with a guy. And then it's funny because when I heard she saying this thing, I said, you should totally go. The guy's Chinese. He's probably going to be amazing, you know? So my bias kicked in immediately. Acupuncture. Chinese? Boom. Experts. I know nothing just by the fact that he was Chinese. And it happened that he was indeed really good. So she went there and she said, with 4 needles, he did the whole thing. And I remember being with my acupuncturist with 18 and with 4 needles. And then he put one in my ear, he turned it, and I felt a little shock. And then my body unlocked again. So I have this bias too that sometimes when I want to learn something, I want to go authentic. I want to learn from someone from the place, because there is this idea that because someone is from the place, he is immersed in the culture. So he'll be able to explain something to me that is beyond technicality. The person will be able to explain to me feels, make analogies, make these relationships. Because I had this conversation one time with a Brazilian couple from São Paulo. And they were saying, I think it makes sense that we charge more and that it's perceived that we make more. Because honestly, and I don't know, Alisson, if you know, I don't know how much actually we make versus non-Brazilian couples or non-Brazilian teachers make. I really don't know numbers like objectively. But I know that based on what organizers say, is more. And they said to me, they told me, we practice several hours a day, every day. We social dance a lot. We do a lot of courses. We go to the studio almost every day. So I think by the sheer amount of time that is spent in the craft, the amount of time that is spent social dancing and learning is a way in their minds to justify making more, you know? And that made a lot of sense to me. The question was also why Brazilian dancers are seen as better. Now, why Brazilian teachers are seen as better? Not necessarily teachers, dancers. And how come they get so good? How come they get so good so fast? And it's simple. We just do the dance way more. And this was a discussion that I was having with a teacher when we were in Taipei together, where he was saying, Gui, do you know what is the only difference between these dancers here in Taipei and the dancers in Brazil? And I said, no. He said, time with the dance. Mm-hmm. If we give these dancers here the same amount of time with the dance that people in Brazil are able to have, they're going to go far and beyond. The next teachers are going to come from here. They're going to travel from here. They're going to be as good, you know, in terms of technique. But in terms of like the feeling of the dance, like that cultural thing that is really hard to grasp and explain, that is way harder. That's when I do recommend that the students go to Brazil. Not necessarily to learn the dance, but to feel how social dancing can be. Especially for the followers. Especially for the followers, because the leaders in Brazil are different creatures, you know? But when it comes to technique, when it comes to learning the dance, like within ginormous quotes properly, in this idea of learning the ways, learning the pathways, time with the dance, I think, my people, is the great differentiating factor, you know?
Not the authenticity of your teacher or whatever. It's more, yeah, exactly. It's all about time, practice, dedication, training. And I agree with you. Like, why majority of the times you see a Brazilian teacher, headlining an event or getting paid more here or there, it's because of the time invested, not because of the nationality, in my opinion. What I don't agree with, and I don't like, and I don't support as an organizer or as a member of the community, is when either the community or the artists themselves just give themselves that credit without actually earning it.
Yes.
When I have been in communities where it's sad, but teachers will actually voice it and go like, well, I am from insert country here. So like, of course, I'm the best teacher here in the city, when I know for a fact that they're not. They're just using the fact that they are born in a certain place to impose that authority without having earned and worked hard to get that credit from the people. And, I think it only really works with people and with communities that haven't been exposed enough. And we are very, very lucky and blessed in that case for like online things and social media, because nowadays we get access to a lot of information that we can go like, oh, that's good information. That's solid information. That's information that makes sense to me. And then you can make a better judgment of who is really a good teacher or who is just lying to you, blank point period. Because unfortunately, I have seen over the years, especially before social media and online things were more present, people who were using their nationality to just, take advantage of the situation, which I think is one of the negative and dark sides of this that I think it's important to talk about. When somebody, like, for example, if we come here to Taipei and we look at the teachers here and we go like, no, guys, you are below us because you're not Brazilian. I could never say that.
Yeah.
Like, it's absolutely the saddest, the worst thing for anybody to say that a teacher is not as good as them just because they're not Brazilian. Like, absolutely freaking not. I get really, really annoyed by it, and sometimes angry as well, because I think it's so unfair, because it basically removes and discredits anything that those people may have done to achieve what they have achieved. And I think that's just wrong.
Especially in the case of Taipei, that we have, for example, two incredible teachers there, two incredible follower teachers who are not Brazilian. I mean, for that particular dance style. Now, for example, we have Magda. She's Polish, has been living in Taiwan for almost 2 decades, teaches Brazilian Zouk, teaches really well, and made this very intentional effort of traveling to Brazil, understanding how Brazilians dance, understanding this cultural aspect that is harder to grasp. She went there to feel a couple times, took classes, understood the thing. How could we come and say, oh, because we are Brazilian, we know more than you just by the fact that our passport is from Brazil, And
this happens all over the world. I mean, not just in Taipei. I'm sorry that we very often mention Taipei and DC and maybe Australia here in this podcast just because we spend so much time in those places. But we do travel to other communities around North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, Brazil, that have those same things.
Yes, there are examples in Europe as well. Like
so many.
And not in case of Brazilian Zouk, but in case of salsa or Cuban salsa or Afro-Cuban with Mandy, like I have seen her teaching her Afro-Cuban, and she's a Taiwanese woman moving in a way that is so completely different from her culture, but you can see how immersed she is. It's like she's an authority on that movement, on that style, on that kind of dance. And she embodies the art form and she explains the art form. She explains the movement, how they and where they're coming from. So she explained the feeling behind the movement, you know. So she's fully embodied in the art form. So she would completely deserve a pay that is as high as someone from the motherland, from where the dance came from.
Hmm.
However, in reality, I think if we have someone from there being called and her being called, there's a likely the likelihood of that person being paid more than she does is high because it's the perception of authority. And this is something that was really cool that I learned once, that you have like your perception of authority and you have the actual authority. Like
Hmm.
when you build authority, like you earn the authority versus when the authority is perceived already. And then in this sense, just by the fact that the person is coming from the land of the dance, the perception of authority is almost automatic, and that's hard for someone who is not from the motherland to, to work with that, because they would need to prove themselves a lot more in order to make themselves, be understood, be seen as someone, as a couple, or as someone who understood this dance and can convey not only technique, but vibe, feeling, and culture. So
Hmm.
I think we are dealing with very intense human bias that it's really hard to fight rationally. I think it's something that goes through a long period of time. And unfortunately, these couples who are not Brazilian, they do need to prove themselves more.
Hmm.
They do need to work harder. And I think that the Brazilian Zouk universe right now reach a stable point in what comes to new artists coming up. I think we stabilized with the new names, maybe, because at some point it was like four of them. And I think we are like more stable with what we have. So there might be some space for a new couple to emerge, and there might be some space for a new couple or a new artist, leader or follower to emerge, not from Brazil.
Hmm.
I think there's like a gap there that could be filled.
And that's the thing. Like most recently, I think in Brazil, the competition has been so strong
Yeah.
that people are actually training super hard and they are coming out of Brazil monsters. Okay. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
discrediting that because right now competition in Brazil is very, very, very high. But looking 10 years back or even more, I wouldn't say it was the same. It was very much like, okay, you're good in Brazil. As soon as you step outside, you're God. And that
Ah,
is
yes.
something that, that's something that doesn't go down with me because I would see back then, especially back then, a lot of people who, as you mentioned, had to work 3 times as hard and they wouldn't get credit just because they were not coming out of Brazil, and that really hurts me because I'm like, bro, that's just not fair. That's just not fair. Okay. Unfortunately, the community didn't have enough, references to make a good judgment. I think now the community also, with the references, with the exposure, the community is smart, very, very smart. And they can pick and select who are the ones that deserve that credit and who are the ones who are like, you know, just pretending or giving themselves that credit. And I think it's very important to say also that, at least from my experience and over this last 20 years, every time I spoke to other teachers of Brazilian Zouk, like master teachers, very, very credited teachers, what do they think about this topic? They always told me, no, Alisson, I don't believe that the nationality matters because I have seen so many people that are just as good and sometimes better than a lot of people trained in Brazil because they train 3, 5, 10 times harder. So at least from my perspective, this thing that happens of maybe separation and different pay and all of that, to be very honest, it's not something that starts from the artists themselves pushing and separating the non-Brazilians. It's more like the perception of the community, the bias of the community going like, well, that's a Brazilian teacher, that's not. I'm going to go to that one. Instead of that Brazilian teacher going like, don't go to that one because they're not Brazilian.
Yeah.
That sometimes happens. I know. But I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, from everywhere that I've been and spoken with, most artists are actually extremely, extremely supportive of everybody. And I, to be honest, have a little bit more support and bias for the non-Brazilians because I know how hard they work and I appreciate that. In every event that I organize, everything that I do, I try to do my best to support those who are working hard. And I don't care where your passport nationality is from. I see your work. I see what you do. I see the quality. I see the effort. I see the dream. And to me, that's what matters.
Yeah, because they have to compensate for the lacking of opportunities to dance that the Brazilians have. So Brazilians, and I say Brazilians, I say people in the axis, Rio, São Paulo, Belo Horizonte, they have more opportunities to social dance. People from other places just don't have as many. So they do need to work harder. So bringing them in to teach, you are rewarding that effort that was made to bring this dance to this new place, sometimes in the other side of the world. So someone is making a ginormous effort to bring the dance to a new place. We're talking about Europe, but there's so many community leaders who are primary followers, who are working so much to bring the dance to their communities and to grow the dance, and have to find ways to compensate for the lacking of opportunities that they have to social dance. And they make it happen, and they find a way to explain the dance in a way that resonates with those who are around them, that can bring people in, that can, explain the dance to a group of people that would not get the dance otherwise. All these things are there. It's the thing more on who provides the opportunities for people to teach Zouk. The local community, the leaders and organizers, And there is a tendency of bringing the Brazilian artists because we want to bring the real thing, right? And then it comes back to my experience at helping organize the Zouk track and Interfusion, where not for Brazilian Zouk, but mostly for the other art forms, when the organizer realized, man, I'm bringing these people from abroad to teach this thing, but I have this local teacher here who's really good. And we end up teaching beginner stuff like intro content over and over again. Why am I going to bring this very expensive someone from this other place where I can just give an opportunity for the local person who is working to build a community? And I like that. And I have a fun anecdote, interesting, ironic to tell, that in my first days teaching Brazilian Zouk here, my first years, the people who told me that I need to put my prices up, none of them were Brazilians. None of them, and to this day, I know there are local from the United States teachers who charge more than I do, so I think here in the United States, it might be slightly different in certain cases, in specific cases, but the 3 times that I heard, oh, you are too cheap, you need to make your prices higher, they were all local teachers. So I think that's maybe something that people who are listening would not expect, but it happened to me 3 times. So the 3 times I raised my prices, it was because a local teacher told me that I was too cheap.
And it's very interesting what you mentioned about within Brazil that happens.
Yeah.
So it's not about just being Brazilian or not, but for example, Brazil is such a huge place that when you go to the north of Brazil in a local community, and then you have this teacher coming from Rio, it's red carpet and all of the things, because it's like they're coming from where all the stars come from.
From the motherland,
So
within the motherland.
exactly. So it even happens within Brazil. So it's just what it is. What it is that it's either the community wanting, or the organizers wanting something that comes from a place, or somebody really earning that credit and deserving that credit. So when I look at it from a place more of like, what do you bring to the community? What do you bring to the students? What do you bring to the event? I don't care where you're from. I'll bring you from wherever. If you bring what I think is worth, I will fully support that work. And I have organized a lot of events, and I do see that sometimes certain teachers will ask for more, certain teachers will ask for less. Sometimes I see a correlation between nationality or not, but most of the times I see more the relationship between price and, I think, like time in the dance, or time in the work, the community. So somebody who's been doing this, traveling, teaching, whatever, for like 15 years, it's beyond their nationality at that point. It's more because of their mastery and experience over time, but somebody who's like just came out of Brazil trying to charge as much as like somebody who's been doing this for 15 years, regardless of nationality, I'm not going to take that. I do not accept. I say, thank you very much, but this is not something that I can afford or something that I can support, because it's not just because you came from Brazil that you can charge as much as the other people who has actually been doing this for a long time. So there has been occasions where I had non-Brazilians that were getting more, were getting paid more than some people that were Brazilians. Because for me, the reward or the price is valid against their time and credit and credibility, and basically like the experience that they have and the product that they can bring. So yeah, I see how, like what you said before, how sometimes in event organization, there is that separation, but for me, I don't make that separation. And I recommend people out there who organize events to, have a think about it, instead of just giving credit because of nationality or something like that, but actually think about what do they bring, regardless of where they come from. Because maybe your community does not need that couple or that type of teaching. Your community needs a different type of teaching. And maybe that could be a couple that does not come from Brazil or is not born in Brazil but living near you. It could be any other person who is a highly skilled teacher that can give to your students what they need and what they want.
Yeah, this topic can go for a very long time. Because I was having like conversation with two organizers from two different parts of the world when we're talking about the economics of an event. And they were basically saying that although sometimes they know that their community would benefit more from this person here, like maybe a more senior teacher, someone who has been around for a longer time, being afraid that they will not sell as many tickets, or they feel uncertain that they will sell enough tickets for this person, but they know that if they bring this new couple from Brazil, they'll probably sell more tickets. So even though they don't know, and then it gets into this like paradoxical, slightly schizophrenic behavior of the Brazilian Zouk community sometimes, where what you want to bring to your students and you have a desire to bring certain things, but then you bring the thing sometimes that you don't want, but you bring it anyways because you think that's the thing that's going to pay the bill. It's the thing that's going to make the event happen. So either you don't make the event happen, or you take the risk of bringing this more senior teacher, but a teacher that is maybe not on a high as he used to be, is less known, and that can be Brazilian, non-Brazilian. or you bring the Brazilians who have this perceived authority and will sell more tickets. That's something that I find so fascinating, actually. And another thing that I have been noticing is some events in Asia, I'm seeing there is the couple there or the teacher who is coming, and underneath, Max certified, I don't know how many wins in Jack and Jill, so like they are starting to put underneath the name some sort of like certifications that this person is qualified. So like this person is not Brazilian, so it doesn't have the perceived authority. So you have to show that they have some authority. So what you say, oh, they completed MAC, they won Jack and Jill a couple times. And there was recently a case of a Brazilian teacher who lost work opportunities because he didn't place in Jack and Jill. And then he made several posts on Instagram about it, saying that like a good competitor doesn't mean a good teacher and vice versa, So there's like these qualifications that sometimes are required, even if you are Brazilian, because there are a lot of Brazilian teachers who are, like you said, the competition right now is fierce, who are scrambling to get an opportunity. And there was this event in Brazil recently called Zouk, who intentionally hired a more diverse lineup. Teachers from all parts of Brazil, teachers from like all walks of life, teachers from all color, all age. So it was a very diverse event, and it was intentionally done this way to also bring opportunity to other people. So it's so complex. There's so many moving parts. We are dealing also with dance economics and the perception of what will sell tickets and what will make the event at least break even. So we are also thinking about these things as organizers. Sometimes it's a balance that is hard to strike, I think.
I think when I'm looking at it from an organizer perspective or somebody who is coaching or assisting somebody who is an organizer, I really try to get them to focus on what is good for the long run, right? So sometimes community leaders, organizers, they're like, oh, I just need to bring a couple every month, to get the energy, to get the vibe and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, how is your weekly classes going? Are people coming? They're like, no. People can't afford the weekenders and the weekly classes. And I'm like, exactly. So you're actually killing the local community. You're killing your local community and people supporting local teachers because you're bringing all of these couples all the time. And there's only so much time and money that people can spend, So actually invest more time in your local community instead of just bringing teachers all the time. Oh, but people want the traveling teachers. I'm like, yes, that's cool. Some people do, but some people are to be honest, not some people, a lot of people are very happy with your weekly classes. And that's why they're here. And that's how you build this community. So trust in yourself that what you're doing is great. And then the weekenders are like an extra thing, maybe once every 3 months or once every 6 months. But the real work of growing the community is your daily work with the community, your weekly classes, your communication, your promotion, your networking with everybody and making sure that the community grows. It's not this teacher that travels every now and then and comes here, dumps a bunch of moves and leaves, and nobody remember those moves in the next day.
Yes.
It's not.
They never get the chance of having a homemade meal. They're always going from restaurant to restaurant every weekend, and never get to experience like some stable, comforting, homemade meal. And it's the thing, man, that's the thing. You were saying something that annoyed you before the middle of the episode. Man, this is the thing that annoys me the most. When the organizer says, oh, but that's what they want. And I'm like, that's what you want. That's what you want. Because how do you know? Have you surveyed everybody? Had you went around and asked if they wanted? Because I know people from communities that are like more focused on weekenders that they really want regular classes, So it's like Sometimes the desire of the organizer is translated as the desire of the community. And then because the organizer has the thing, I used to hear this so many times, like, why do you teach these things? Like, oh, because that's what people want to learn. And I'm like, no, 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 no. People will learn whatever you teach. Again, you are not cooking homemade meal. You always taking them to restaurants from time to time. So they will get spoiled, but not in a good way because you're just having them have things that are not everyday, like ordinary stuff that will actually do, like movements that they will actually lead in a social, right? So this is something that also, man, bothers me so much.
Yeah, we can always go back to the previous episode. So please make sure you follow and subscribe and check all of our episodes on Spotify, YouTube, Instagram, because we've spoken about this where like the community is a very top-down thing. Okay, so most of the best of communities that I've worked or seen and the best dancers that I've danced with, they're from communities of teachers that are very focused on what do they want their students to be. Do you want your students to be comfortable dancers, dancers that can dance with anybody? You want your students to know what the dance feels like and how the dance is structured. Focus on that. Focus on that. Give the weekly classes, maybe some weekenders that you can teach, all of those things, because that's what the community is going to be like. But when you're looking just at the numbers and the money and going like, well, like when I make weekenders, everybody comes, so I can afford that, but the weekly classes are very dead. Well, then you're pretty much raising children on fast food. It's not going to be good for the long run. And guess what? The community is actually not going to grow, in my opinion. The community is really strongly based on the people that actually want to show up every week. My priority and my attention always goes to the people that shows up every week. The people that just come to social, the people that just come to weekenders, I welcome them. I'm always nice to everybody and I'll dance with anybody. But if you ask me who I prioritize, always the people that show up, the people that are helping the community grow. That's the people that if there is any moment that I need to prioritize, I will prioritize. And when I think about my classes, my courses, the prices and everything like that, I have that in mind. I want a community that is safe, comfortable, knowledgeable, and growing and inclusive and embraces everybody. That's the community that I want. So if you haven't, go back to some previous episodes and listen to the ones that we talked about. Why do you dance? Why do you organize something? Why do you go to a dance class? That, to me, is like the ruling king or queen of all the decisions that I make. What do I want for the community? And I'm going to say something that may be controversial to what I'm actually saying, but what I want for the community is not what I want, is what I know that the community is asking for. They're asking for comfort. They're asking for safety. They're asking for confidence. They're asking for knowledge. So by listening to the community, I make the decision of like wanting to give that to the community. And as always, if you're not sure, please connect with us. We would love to help you in any moment that you're going through with your community.
Yeah. So I think in the end of the day, when we think about this idea of why Brazilian dancers or Brazilian teachers are more expensive, why they charge more, all these things we have been talking about play a huge role in it, like demand, perception, the economics of everything, because, for example, in this case, that somebody runs a local community and wants to bring someone to do a weekender from time to time. So want to bring something special for the students. And then they're going to go study the market. And the likelihood that they find that there's a Brazilian couple that is being the famous one on social media is much higher than the likelihood of them finding a couple who's not Brazilian. And then when going talking to them, it's going to be more expensive. because there is more demand, So it's like it could be like an invitation to research what are some other teachers that are there around doing great work that could do what you are envisioning for your community, not Brazilians. So we start a movement where, as organizers, we research other couples that could be really good for our community and then go ahead and hire them, just to like bring more variety and see how people who are not from Brazil translate the dance, what they talk about, and when they talk about the dance. So you just bring more flavors to the community and offer more opportunities. And then again, recognizing the economics of everything and the risk that might be involved in bringing a couple that people might not know. But guys, to be honest, given our experience here at District Zouk, many times our students don't really know the big names. They don't know. You say a couple is coming from outside to teach, and it's the fact that it's a weekender and it's something special already dresses the thing with this aura of special that attracts people, that has enough attraction power. When people start learning the big names, then they make more specific requests. But at certain stages, they really don't know. At least that's our experience here. So you can bring a couple from another country and people come, at least again, in our experience. So give people the benefit of the doubt to let them give a chance to these people that they don't know about, because they also don't know about anybody else. Sometimes the local Zouk teacher is the biggest authority. And if they say this couple is good, people are like, okay, so this couple is good. Some people don't even know that even though Brazilian Zouk has the name Brazilian in the name, how much it is related to Brazil or how tied it is to Brazil. Like people start learning these things when they go into the dance a little deeper.
Yes. And if you're not aware of who those teachers are, please connect with other community leaders and ask around. Please reach out to people who are hiring people that you don't know, for example, some local or interstate or nearby teachers. But one of the best ways to do this is to actually, when you go to an event, a festival that has multiple teachers, multiple rooms, go to the classes of those teachers that are close to your community or maybe in your country and take a class from them and realize what they can bring to you. Maybe they're not going to bring the toallas and counterbalances and spins and crazy stuff, but maybe they are so good at explaining details about something that would be so valuable for your community. And that is great. That's already amazing. So give a chance to everybody, research, and bring all the flavors. I think that's how you build the best dancers in the best communities. And that's what I have seen from my experience. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys there, and either as a student, a teacher, organizer, promoter, supporter, anybody in the community here being with us in ZoukNerd land. And so thank you for being here with us. Please make sure that you subscribe and follow us, YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and all of the other platforms. And we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you, thank you. Beijos, beijos. Abraços and ciao.
Bye, everybody.